Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth. We talk about the latest home video releases, some good, some bad. But you know what? We always have a darn good time talking about them. But it is your turn to get this party started.
Yes, and I have one I'm very excited about. It is a new 4K Steelbook release from Sony that is the Raid Redemption from Gareth Evans. Uh, or is it Edwards? I don't know which one we're talking about. There's too many Gareths in here. But yeah, so this is an Indonesian film that was released through Sony Pictures Classics in the 2010s. And I saw this for the first time a few years ago, so I was excited to revisit this because it's a very brutal, like hard-hitting film, and it still hits just as hard, and it looks even better in 4K. You can kind of get a little bit of the interior artwork here. Um, and so it's a very simple plot. It just follows a police like a SWAT team kind of who are going in to take down this drug lord who resides at the top floor of this apartment complex. But in order to get to him, they have to make it through levels and levels of people who are just trying to kill them, and it's just super bloody, great battles, like tons of like gunfights and like people crawling through holes in the floor from floor to floor, and it's just insane action from beginning to end, and it's really thrilling. It's one of the better action films of the 2010s, and it's super entertaining, and I think a lot of people ranked it. It's like a cult favorite, so I'm probably not speaking to like a lot of people who haven't seen it, but those who haven't, it's a really good like action filled time. So this 4K release, it comes with the old Blu-ray disc and a newly remastered 4K disc in Dolby Vision, and it's been approved by the director. And I know he did like some extensive work on it to make it look the best that it ever has. And it's like it has a slightly different color grade from the original disc, which I think was the intention from the director of like what he wanted it originally to look like. But it's not like a egregious change or anything. It looks very nice and consistent throughout, and there's no damage or anything. It has really deep black levels. It's not a very colorful film, but the Dolby Vision like does a really nice job of like with the contrast, and all the different like smoky environments hold up very well. And it's a Sony encoded disc, so they always do almost like a perfect job, I would say. And this is another example of that. This does include the original Indonesian language in Atmos. And there's actually two different soundtracks for this one. Whenever it was released in America, it was given a new soundtrack by Linkin Park's Mike Shinoda. So you can play that track or you can play the original version. Both of the original language versions are in Atmos. As well as a 5.1 option for that. And there's also an English dub for those who don't like subtitles. But we always want to stick with the original language, and that also has the upgraded audio. So that's one reason to go for that. There does not seem to be any new special features, but the original Blu-ray ports over all the original special features, which includes an audio commentary from the director, a couple of different interviews, and like a Q&A at a theatrical event, some featurettes, several different featurettes that are kind of short, but they are kind of get into the production a little bit. So if you're a fan of the Raid Redemption, this 4K release is fantastic. The original Blu-ray disc was a little bit just didn't quite get to where you wanted it to. So the fact that we did get this 4K release really puts it to where it needs to be. And it's a good start from Sony to this year, which I think it's going to be a great year for Sony. So the Raid Redemption, fantastic release.
Nice. Yeah. Did John Carpenter like sue what was it? The second, like the filmmakers in the second one, because it was sort of like
Maybe that rings a bell slightly. I'm not sure if it was this film or another one, but yeah, I have not. I have the second raid over here, but I haven't watched that one yet. So hopefully that'll get a 4K release before I get around to that one.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. I have the just Blu-rays of that, so it sounds like an upgrade is needed. So thank you for that. I'm definitely really interested in checking that out now. Also, I do apologize, y'all. I have been sick all week. So I'm trying to like bring it to you. But yeah, we're gonna do the best we can here. My first title is Smoke Sauna Sisterhood. Now, this one is probably something that not everybody knows about or is clamoring for, but I thought it was really interesting. Um, so it is basically about a group of women in Estonia that gather in a sauna and cleanse and kind of unburden themselves. Um, and I mean, obviously, I picked it, so I was like really curious, but I was a little bit worried that it was going to be like very super serious, 24/7, maybe a bit of like a downer because, yeah, they're going to be talking about like really heavy subjects. But and while they do that, I love how they kind of balance it with some more like lighthearted stuff. There's a scene in particular that I wanted to mention where the girls are just kind of like in the sauna talking about getting like the one girl got an unsolicited dick pic. And I'm like, that truly is universal. And this sort of begat like this other conversations about like I don't know, like these sort of like funny sexual things that happen to them. And it I mention this because again, I think it makes a nice balance between the more heady and sort of heavy stuff. And it really does help you connect more when you're like, oh yeah, they're they might have a different culture than us, but like, yeah, they also may or may not enjoy dick pics and go through all these other problems. And again, it's not that I'm making fun or making light or anything, but like, yeah, there is something joyous about having these like little intimate moments where we can feel connected with them. But like, yeah, it's just so beautifully shot. It shows like the process of them cleansing and sort of the rituals before they do these saunas. And again, it's not something that like is going to be probably on most people's radar, but I think it's I say time and time again, it's something we always try to strive to find things that are mainstream, yes, but also like stuff that is maybe not getting talked about a lot. So I think this is really cool. I will also make sure if you want to like try before you buy, Kino does have a VOD, which is nice because you're still supporting an amazing label. But if you don't want a commitment of like buying it or you watching the show, so I think you like home media, but it might be like a like try before you buy or own or something. I will link that in the description so y'all can check that out. I really recommend it, and yeah, I'm glad this was put out. I would have liked the Blu-ray, of course, but I'm just glad that this has a physical release.
Yeah, as we record this, Sundance is just starting, and that was actually a title I watched at last year's Sundance.
Mm-hmm.
It remained one of my favorite documentaries that came out last year. So I'm glad you got to check it out because that is a really special documentary. I thought it was going to make the documentary shortlist for the Oscars, and unfortunately didn't. But it is really worth checking out if you're interested in documentaries, especially because, like you said, it does balance the seriousness with some levity, and it's just it's a really rewarding one, and I'm glad you spotlighted it. My next one was a little unusual for me, and I'll explain. But I was interested to check it out after I saw some positive notices for this. This is another Sony release. This is on Blu-ray. It is the new film Journey to Bethlehem, which is a faith-based movie, but it is not the kind that usually rubs me the wrong way. It is the story of the Nativity. So this unfortunately comes just a few weeks after Christmas, but this will be good to add to my Christmas collection for titles that may not be just like comedies and stuff like that. It's a little bit, but it is an overall kind of fun, joyous experience that's a lot better than your typical faith-based movie. And I'm not a particularly religious person, and most faith-based movies do irritate me because they are poorly made. And I usually give them like the benefit of the doubt on some occasions, not all of them, but if there's a movie dealing with religious subject matter, I like to check it out to judge it on its own merits. And this one's actually pretty good because this is also a musical. So it feels almost like a kind of like Greatest Showman slash like Disney live action like musical type feel, just with the nativity, and you're seeing Mary's journey. And what I do really like about this is it does put a focus a little bit more on Mary, and the filmmakers even say in the credits that they're trying to stick to the spirit of the story, even if it's not like 100% historically accurate. But Mary is kind of depicted to be kind of like a self-assured woman who also is kind of beholden to tradition, and she's not going to like necessarily go against her parents whenever she is getting into like an arranged marriage, but she also wants more for herself from this life. And then once she does end up getting with Joseph, and then immaculate conception happens, it is a lot with her dealing with like exploring her feelings, and then like the feelings of shame of what people might think about her from not believing that the immaculate conception did happen, and just a lot of judgment of her character and just a lot of internal exploration. I wasn't planning on making this connection, but like Smoke Sauna Sisterhood, there are moments of levity throughout, and the songs are actually pretty good throughout. There are a few disposable ones, but there's a lot of catchy tunes. Without being disrespectful to the subject matter for like a Christian audience that might be watching this, I don't think they'll think that this isn't like some like blasphemous tale. This is very much within that realm, but it is also accessible to someone who might not necessarily be a Christian or religious. And I think it's just a really well-rounded movie musical. It's not the best. There are some limitations, but one thing I want to point out is this man right here, Antonio Banderas, is playing the king, and he is doing the most in a good way. He's like vile. He's an evil king, and like he really makes this film like have a little bit more gravitas and just like a little bit more stakes to this, which I really appreciated. And overall, the other performances they're good, but like having Antonio Banderas to kind of anchor it with like more of a established actor does really help kind of legitimize this whole experience. But if you're a fan of movie musicals and you're not completely against like religious like stories, Journey to Bethlehem is surprisingly pretty solid. It's catchy, fun, interesting, and it's a good family Christmas story, even though like it is January now. But I think you can watch it anytime, but it's the nativity story. You can have it for your collection for later this year, or just watch it whenever you want. But this Blu-ray looks really great. The new movie, so consistent, clear picture, nice, colorful hues, and that leap off the screen. Really robust audio soundtrack, and a pretty good amount of special features. There are some deleted scenes and some different featurettes, like a get to know each character type thing, and like a making of, and like I said, deleted scenes. So pretty well-rounded package from Sony, and does come with a digital copy that was not in there because I've already taken it out, but you also get a digital copy. So Journey to Bethlehem, if it sounds interesting at all to you, it's better than you might think it is.
Nice. So I have like a follow-up question, not about
Sure.
that movie, but have you seen Mean Girls, the musical yet?
Not yet. No, I will get that whenever it hits home media.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see that actually. I don't know. That's a whole tangent, but no, that sounds cool. I was gonna say this is not a Mean Girls podcast. Um, but yeah, no, that sounds interesting, and yeah, I mean it's never too early to start adding to your Christmas movie collection. So my next title is I'm moving to something less serious, a little more fun, and this is Warner Archives Gentleman Jim. And I have to say I've seen this a few times before and I really like it. I'm really glad it got a Blu-ray. So it is about a boxer, and I think like Errol Flynn is just so amazing in this. I think I put this up with like him as Robin Hood in sort of this about the same tier. Like he so it's about this I don't know, he's like I think he's supposed to be like a bank clerk or something, but he's got a lot of like swagger, he's got a lot of charm, and he seizes this opportunity to kind of find his way into this exclusive country club that has a boxing program and is able to just use again his the devil's charm to just climb the ladder. And his charisma, his like the actor's charisma, just I mean, you're like, I get it. This is how this guy is kind of doing all these things. Like even at one point where like people in the club are starting to be so annoyed with him, like his antics,
Mhm.
like he's still able to kind of find a way to turn that around and in his favor. Like he is the ultimate like failing up because he's got the charm, he's got the like moxie, I think is a word we don't use too much anymore, but I like. So it's a little bit of a you've kind of seen this story before, but again, I think the performances is really what like shines here. Again, it also is well directed, beautifully shot. Yeah, I mean, this was like in the era when like Warner Brothers was making like some of the most amazing prestige films. Yeah, it looks great. Again, I've seen it a few times, but this is by far the best. Unfortunately, doesn't have like any like new features, but these all are port overs from the DVD edition. And again, usually I don't know. I mean, the DVDs were fine, but like these are always so much better, like worlds better. Like the restorations and stuff. So if you owned this previously, upgrade it. If you're curious and haven't seen it, it's really charming. It's really funny. Like Errol Flynn again is just like he doesn't go full ham, but like he just knows that kind of line. Have you seen this one?
Not yet. No, I haven't gotten my copy yet.
Okay. Well, when you do, you'll see like
Mhm.
he doesn't go over the top, but like he has this like I don't know, it's just like you're just drawn to him like a magnet, but he doesn't have to do it in a way that's super boisterous or loud or anything. So yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. I mean, the boxing stuff's pretty fascinating, but again, I think it's just I like that it's more of a character study than like a boxing movie. So yeah, Gentleman Jim, I think you should check it out. It's really good. It's a really good release from Warner Archive.
Yeah, and I know people rejoice anytime a new Errol Flynn movie comes out on Blu-ray. So I'm
Mm,
glad that Warner Archive's been serving up a couple in recent months. So that's exciting.
yeah.
My next title is one I was very interested in, a lot of because of the title, but then I'm also just a big anime fan, so I'm just give me time to pop off for a little bit. This is from Sentai Films, and this is uh, the Tunnel to Summer, the Exit of Goodbyes. So a very wordy title, but it kind of plays in that kind of like supernatural romance vein of like a Your Name or Weathering with You, titles like that, especially Your Name for this one, where this specifically is about two teenagers who both have some lingering trauma in their past, and the boy who's like the main protagonist, he learns of this like this mystical tunnel that if you go into it, it will basically grant your heart's greatest desire, but it kind of functions kind of like if you've seen Interstellar, like whenever you get close to a black hole, whenever you're in the tunnel, the time functions differently. So the longer you're in the tunnel, like so many seconds in the tunnel is like hours on the outside world. So the more time you go into the tunnel, the more time you're losing in the real world. And it's just the characters kind of dealing with that and trying to heal their trauma perhaps through supernatural means, but also through like him and this girl getting to know each other, they start to bond outside the tunnel and maybe can heal each other without going to such drastic means. So it's exploring these characters' inner lives and like their traumas, but while also them growing closer to one another and understanding one another. And it's a really good use of like science fiction and like supernatural elements. It's beautiful, gorgeous animation. I don't think it's up there with like the best of like the titles that I mentioned that this is similar to, but it's a really solid movie. I'd probably give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's a really, really good movie with like gorgeous traditional animation, a really good soundtrack, and a really emotional finale. It really hit home for me, and I really appreciate it. And this Blu-ray looks fantastic. It has both the original Japanese audio as well as an English dub. Once again, go with the original, but if you're afraid of subtitles, the dub is there. In terms of special features, there's not very much. There's just a few promos, but the movie is strong enough on its own to justify a purchase, in my opinion. If you're an anime fan, definitely check it out. It's very worthy of being in your collection. And I haven't done much from Sentai films in the past. I hope to do more in the future. But The Tunnel to Summer, The Exit of Goodbyes, it's a good entry. So glad I caught up with that one.
Nice. So my next title is one that I'm like, this is right up your alley. Like, I know you love music documentaries.
Mhm.
And this one's a really interesting one. This one is kind of akin to the Smoke Sauna Sisterhood, which is another documentary called Ever Deadly. Now have you seen this one?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Tell me
It's
on it.
okay. So here's my pitch.
Mhm.
No, so it's about throat singing, and I think that like that's the hook. That's what got me interested because I think that's really fascinating, and it kind of made me want to learn a little bit more about it. And the documentary is about this band that um she states right off the bat that what she's doing with her music, I mean, it is in her culture, obviously, but like what she's doing in her music, she is taking the concept of throat singing, but she's recontextualizing it in a non-traditional way. Um, what is a traditional way, you might ask? Well, at the very beginning of the film, it's like this beautiful, like icy landscape, and there's two women, and they're throat singing, and it's kind of like they're face to face, and it's a call and response kind of thing. And each time they get closer and closer, and it's almost, yeah, like I said, it's sort of like you think of it like as sort of like she, I think she even says in the documentary it's sort of like freestyle rap or something. It's like it's something that you just do how you're feeling, and bouncing off of that person's energy. And
Mhm.
so it's fascinating. So you, I mean, you don't have to look up what traditional throat singing is. They literally show it to you, and in a really fun way too. But what's cool about this documentary is um yeah, we get to hear her music, which is again throat singing mixed with metal and a little
No.
bit of folk, and that's awesome, and I love it. And now I'm kind of obsessed with her music. But like, she also, the lead singer, I'm not gonna pronounce her name because I'm gonna butcher it, but like, she also mixes like footage of her concerts with like stuff with her family, and overlaid with like her narration, which is very poetic and beautiful. And it's like it's a really interesting kind of way to weave the narrative where it's not just like people explaining what they're doing and then just a bunch of like footage from their tour or shows or whatever.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really appreciate that. I think it's interesting. I think it hits that right balance of a really nice music doc, but also a very beautiful, poetic kind of snapshot of the lead singer and her family. And it's such a cool thing. And the other thing that's really interesting is it also kind of acts as at a certain point they talk about their family and their family history, and it's all this like really beautiful, rich heritage, and it really like feels like you're connecting with them on a really cool level. And yeah, I think it's like one of my favorite new documentaries. It's really worth checking out. And again, I'm pretty sure that this will also be on the Kino VOD service, and I will link that in the description as well. Like if you want to try before you buy or something like that, if you just want to rent it and check it out, you're still supporting Kino by using their VOD service, and you don't have the commitment of like buying it or owning it or whatever, but still should check it out because I liked it. I thought it was really cool. I think you're gonna love it. I'm really excited. Whenever you do see it, we're gonna have to kiki about that and
Oh, yeah.
hear what you think. So, but yeah, Ever Deadly, have it on your radar. And again, I will link where you can buy it and you can rent it and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So you sold me, you did a good job. You were under pressure, but you ended up doing it. So good job. So the remainder of my titles are from Kino Studio Classics. The first one that I'm going to dig into here is from director Jacques Doré. And this is The Outside Man with Jean-Louis Trintignant, Anne Margaret, Roy Scheider, Angie Dickinson, a host of great performers. And this has double-sided artwork. I've already changed it. So here's the slipcover, and here is underneath. So very different cover art underneath. So I think that's pretty cool. So buy early if you want. And this actually is from their deal with Gaumont. And there's actually two versions of this film. There is the original English language that's uncut. It runs about an hour and 54 minutes. And here's the French version that runs about an hour and 53 minutes. And both of these are new 4K restorations of the original camera negative. And if you want to hear the original voice actors, you stick with the English language version. But I think since this has so much French talent involved, and there's a slightly different version, they decided to have the French version on a second disc. And because since it's not just a matter of a different vocal track, they didn't want to ruin the encode by jamming both cuts on one disc. But this is a really, really interesting movie. Jean-Louis Trintignant, he plays a hitman who is brought over from France to kill a wealthy man. Like I think he's a mob boss in Los Angeles. When he gets the job done, he learns that he was hired by the man's son. And then once he accomplishes the job, the man's son also hires a different hitman to take out the original hitman so he can tie up all the loose ends and there's like nothing left. And that the second hitman is Roy Scheider. So there's that kind of a cat and mouse thing where these two dueling hitmans are against one another, and there's getting police involved, and body counts keep racking up just through like different character interactions. And there's some amusing moments with like some of the people who get taken like temporarily hostage in some of these situations, and there are some annoying kids that are slapped. If that's your thing, you can see annoying kids get slapped. And it's a really interesting like zippy movie. You never really feel like it's like lagging in any particular way, and the performances are really great. And even though Jean-Louis, he's speaking in English for most of the time, he doesn't really feel out of place, and it kind of sounds natural to him. Yeah, it's just a really good, cool movie. If you like the idea of dueling hitmen, it's pretty simple, but it works very well. And Jacques Doré, he's a great director. He has a great eye, and all of this comes together really nicely. As mentioned, this comes from a 4K scanning of the original 35 millimeter camera negative. Looks fantastic. It's been a carefully handled restoration. Looks very nice. Not much in the way of damage or density fluctuations in the grain. Everything is resolved very well. It's very colorful. I didn't notice any irregular like color grading or anything. It looked very natural. So this is just a very carefully appointed restoration. I think they've done a really nice job, and it sounds really nice. The English language track comes through nicely. I didn't watch the French version in totality, but from what I sampled, it also looked and sounded pretty much identical, except for like it's obviously in French. So, but sound quality wise, it pretty much matches up. On the original English language cut, there's an audio commentary from Howard S. Berger and Stephen Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson. And there's also a host of trailers. So there's the commentary track and two versions of the movie in a 4K restoration on Blu-ray. It's not a 4K release, just to be clear. So The Outside Man, if it sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out, because the talent alone, I think, is worth checking out. But also the movie happens to be very good.
Yeah, that looks really cool, and surprisingly had never heard of that one before. So that one is gonna go in my ever-growing pile of Kino movies that I need.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, I am also doing a Kino movie for my next title, and that is um Robert Wise's Odds Against Tomorrow. And when I log this into Letterbox, I see that you I think kind of gave this like a what, like 3 out of 5 or something.
Yeah, it was solid enough. Yeah.
So no reversible art, just the disc. But nice slipcover, like we always say, if you want that, order it early. But yeah, it is so like the cold open is very shocking, right? Because it's Robert Ryan's character, and I'm not gonna repeat what he says, but like he says like something really awful to a kid, and it kind of sets up his character as being like a horrible racist. And so that is sort of the what's used as a backdrop, I guess, for like your typical heist movie. um and I think like that's an interesting sort of element to include. I don't know if it works well enough. I think it could have worked better than how they kind of incorporated that kind of tension. Um, it's impactful, but I think it could have went maybe a little bit further. But I think it's a really good movie. It is probably a little bit slower than what you might consider like modern heist films. They do take a lot of time to sort of like get there. It's like this very intricate sort of like, all right, we're assembling the team, and you have the one guy getting everybody together. Situations are happening where people are getting desperate, so they take the job. Harry Belafonte's character is like in bad with the mob, and now he's got to take this job. And him and Robin, I said Robin Williams. Wow, Robert Ryan. Robin Williams would have been cool in this movie though, but yeah, I've always been a big fan of all these actors. Shelley Winters is awesome. I always thought she was such an underrated actor, but yeah, no, it's great. There's a lot of great sequences. There's a lot of, I mean, Robert Wise is amazing. He's such a great, prolific filmmaker. But yeah, I think that it does struggle a little bit in the third act. I think that there's things that don't come together quite as clearly as they should. And I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give away some of the like third act stuff. But if you know, it's good. It could have been better, but I love that cast. Again, it's very well directed. They use the tension, I think, really well, but maybe could have been better. But what is really good is this transfer like that. So it doesn't say if this is a new 4K scan, but it does look overall really nicely restored. Now there is a little bit of like artifacts and a little bit of like lines and stuff, but not enough for me to really be like it's a bad transfer. Like I think it's really like good. In fact, it's not perfect. I'm actually kind of surprised that this maybe didn't get a 4K release, or at least a 4K Blu-ray. But yeah, it still looks pretty good. It does have some nice extras. We got a commentary track by film historian Alan K. Rode. We have the post-screening Q&As with some of the actors, including Harry Belafonte, which is awesome. And I believe that's like something new to this release, as well as a trailer. So nice, really nice package. Again, looks really good. Is it perfect? No. I mean, like the movie, is it perfect? Also no, but it was, yeah, it's pretty good. If I mean, I don't know. If you like heist movies, I think it's an interesting one to watch because again, it adds sort of a very timely sort of element to it, which sadly is still relevant. But it's always interesting when you can see a heist movie from maybe a different lens. Like I said, like Harry Belafonte's character. That alone, I think, is makes it worthwhile. So, good movie.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was previously released by Olive Films, I think. I think it was fairly bare bones. So
Yeah.
that those special features, I think they're older, but I don't think they were on the Olive Films release. So they're
Mm.
new to Blu-ray, I believe. And the Harry Belafonte interview is especially interesting. It runs quite a while. I think it's almost
Mhm.
an hour long, and in it he tells some interesting stories about how the script originally was and how they really changed it because they were going to tone down kind of some of the racial elements to where there was going to be a more traditional like, and look how this white man and this black man ended up like becoming friends. And he was like, nah, like, no, I'm not doing that film. I'm doing something that like means something. And just like
Yeah.
hearing him talk about this is like back in 2009. It's very interesting. So I'm glad those were added to this release from
Yeah.
Kino because it really helps kind of put into context of what this film could have been and what he was really striving to do with the film. So I appreciated that for sure. And speaking of re-releases, the next two are technically re-releases, but they are the kind that we've been getting recently from Kino Classics, and I have mixed feelings about it. But overall, I'm glad they're doing them. This first one is The Devil's Brigade, which is a film that they released, I believe, back in 2014, 2015 ish, and I'll talk about the differences here in a second. So you got the slip covers, probably one of the bigger ones, and then the same underneath, no reversible cover art, and just the disc here. This is kind of like your classic, almost Dirty Dozen esque adventure. This is directed by Anthony McLaglen. This is basically about a group of soldiers who are kind of being overlooked and counted out by some of the higher brass. Are kind of they're a mixture of Americans and Canadians who are just kind of the cast-offs in the military. But until the William Holden character, he kind of volunteers them to go on this basically almost kind of suicide mission against the Nazis, and they have to go up like these treacherous mountains, and they kind of like bonds them all together to show that they are and it's also based on a true story. I should mention that they are someone who people who should not be discounted. They just need to be kind of brought together and kind of whipped into shape and to be sent on this very perilous mission. And it's very entertaining and like from like an action war film stance. Especially I really like the ascent up the mountain. It's a really interesting dynamic that you don't get a lot on film. Like usually it's just kind of like more steady, like open field, like two sides like firing at one another or like running towards one another. But the initial ascent up this mountain is really interesting in how it's kind of pulled off. And it all kind of culminates in a really interesting and like thrilling finale. It's not completely different from a lot of war films, but it's really solid one. So it's like the kind of difference in terrain and the ensemble. So like I said, William Holden, there's Cliff Robinson, Vince Edwards, but then also some of the smaller people that like just kind of show up for a little bit. Like I believe Carol O'Connor from like All in the Family shows up. And so you have Dana Andrews, Michael Rennie, Claude Akins, Harry Carey Jr., a lot of good people in this. And if you're a fan of war films, I think you'll appreciate it. It's not like the best of the best. It isn't like a Dirty Dozen, but it is solid. And this release, if you have the older release, I think you have to weigh whether or not you think this is enough to upgrade. This doesn't add any new special features like my next title does that I'm going to talk about. This has it ports over the commentary track that was previously on most recent release from 2015 with Steve Mitchell and Stephen J. Rubin. They do a lot of commentary tracks on their Kino's war films. And I do not have confirmation. I believe the original release was a single layer Blu-ray 25, and this is a Blu-ray 50. So that gives you several, like about 30-ish megabytes more space for things to flourish and not be so compressed. This isn't a new master, though. This uses the same master as before, but with just a little bit more room to breathe and like have a little bit better encoding. I do like with all these re-releases. I appreciate that they're bringing them out and trying to make them a little bit better. I do wish they could just give them new restorations. I know it costs money, but more money than just giving it an upgraded disc space. But I wish they could, or even if they're not going to upgrade to a 4K release, give it a 4K remaster. But that's not the case. So there are some flaws here and there. But I'm sure it looks the best that it has on physical media so far. So if you have the old version, it's probably minuscule in its upgrade, but you also get the slipcover. If you've never bought it, definitely get this one because the old one's out of print and it's just no brainer. And it is a pretty entertaining war movie. So overall, it's a solid release. I wish it could have gotten a fresh restoration, but it's worth checking out.
Okay. Yeah, that is once again another one that like sounds really interesting, and I'm like kind of amazed I haven't heard of. But my next one I did hear of because of Archer. You're an Archer fan, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Well, not back to back, but I'm going to be talking about both.
Oh
The
yeah.
so basically I'm a big Archer fan, and like he always I mean, like not always, but like he name checks these two movies. So the first title I'm talking about is White Lightning, starring Burt Reynolds, and here's the back. And no, yes, we do have a first part. So there we go.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, I like that one way more. But yeah. So I don't know. I feel very two ways about these sort of like country fried exploitation sort of films. And like, listen, I love a good exploitation film no matter what the setting, right? And like I kind of grew up in the country, so like I mean not like to the level of like running moonshine, but like I get the vibe, and so I'm kind of well and thoroughly over it. But I don't know. I don't know. This is what I'm getting at is this was pretty entertaining. So this is Burt Reynolds playing this like kind of rebel without a cause type character. He runs moonshine. He gets caught. He's serving his time. Meanwhile, on the outside, his brother is killed by corrupt politicians. And Burt Reynolds' character makes a deal where he will go undercover, get hard evidence against the corrupt. I can't remember who exactly. Like he was like the sheriff or something, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, or something. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, like I can't think of that character actor's name, but like, it's Chef's Kiss.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, he amazingly is allowed to do this and has the rest of his sentence commuted for this, I guess. Um, but you know, of course, like zaniness ensues. Burt Reynolds gets into some shenanigans. sleeps with his best friend's wife because I don't know. Like there's just non sequiturs where I'm like, sure, why not? Okay. Um, like it's very cringy because they're always like, so this is very much a this is set in the South, and we are like very proud of our Southern heritage, and it's so cringe. What's really funny is I was like thinking, oh, there are no African American characters in this. And then one shows up to just be like, hey, buddy. And, so Burt Reynolds' character can be like, hey, audience, see, I like black people too, which makes it even more kind of cringe because he's not like this guy has like one scene and has like really no bearing on the plot or anything, despite some kind of weird non sequiturs like that. I love the action. It's a lot of fun. Is it a little predictable? Sure. Is the motivation to like avenge his brother kind of stock? Also, yes, but I don't know. There's a kind of earnestness about it that you don't really see. Like no one's being super quippy. No one has to kind of lampshade stuff. Like, gee, isn't this crazy?
Mhm.
Marvel line. So yeah, it is very much of its time, like I said. But surprisingly, it's not as cringy as I might have thought it would have been. There are some slurs, but they're not like there might be like one maybe homophobic slur if I'm remembering that correctly. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's not too bad, and certainly not bad for like a '70s movie set in the South. So
Mhm.
take that for what it's worth. How this looks pretty good. I will say that there are some scenes where the colors look a little bit like muted or muddy, and I don't necessarily know if that's just how it was kind of filmed. This isn't the most visually vibrant movie, but yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot in the way of like artifacts and scratches. They're definitely, I mean, you can tell that this isn't like a 4K or even a 2K remaster, which would have been nice. I mean, I guess maybe like the audience, they didn't think the audience would be there, an up like a really good upgrade on this. But I'm just it's cool to have it. Again, I'm an Archer fan, so now when he references White Lightning, I know what he's talking about. I mean, contextually I knew, but now I actually seen it, so that's cool. And I will be talking later about the sequel, which is spoiler alert, crap.
Ooh, harsh words. I just wanted to, since I talked about my previous release, it kind of ties into yours. Both that release and the sequel, Gator, are like my releases, where these were released several years ago by Kino, and these are just been re-released with slipcovers and like expanded, like dual layer disc, the Blu-ray 50s instead of the Blu-ray 25. So that's what's different in terms of those. I talked about them previously. One kind of amusing note for myself: whenever I watched those movies a couple months ago, I did not know that Gator was the sequel to White Lightning. I just knew that there was two Burt Reynolds movies coming out that month, and I got Gator first. And I threw it on. I watched it, and it wasn't until I was watching the special features that they were talking about it being a sequel to White Lightning, and I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "I did not know I was missing anything."
Yeah, that is very jarring to watch them. I mean, not that like obviously you can because they, if I'm remembering correctly, they don't really reference like there's no sort of continuity. You can kind of, but which one did you like more? I just want to like I'm kind of dying to know.
I think White Lightning is the better movie. I don't think Gator's crap though, so I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. One thing I do want to note with those releases, and you're probably going to touch on it whenever you talked about Gator, but the special features, I was shocked that they got on the original release, and they carried it over here. They got Burt
Or
Reynolds
Reynolds.
like in his older years to come back and talk about both of these movies for about 10 to 15 minutes each, which for Burt Reynolds, like to even come back and reflect upon these is pretty great. Especially the second one was his directorial debut, so that makes sense. But he spills so much tea on these interviews. Like he's talking about like some of these like actresses who were like going around flashing people on set and how he had to like have a conversation with her, and like other people who like he did not get along with on the set. Like he is just dropping all these bombs. So if you are a Burt Reynolds fan or just like love gossip, listen to these interviews because they're so much fun. And I just like I appreciate Kino getting these interviews. So I wanted to point that out, and we can talk more about Gator after you talk about it. But first off, I'm going to talk about my final title. Is also a re-release, as I mentioned, and it's also maybe one of my favorite titles I've talked about this week. I wanted to end off with a bang, and this is "The Russians Are Coming." The Russians are coming, which I had previously, but I had not gotten around to watching it. So I'm glad that I finally got spurred on to actually watch it. This had been on my radar for quite a while because this is a Best Picture nominee from 1966, and it has Alan Arkin in it, and I love Alan Arkin, the now late Alan Arkin, which breaks my heart. But this has an insane cast. Even Marie Saint, Carl Reiner, Jonathan Winters, Paul Ford, tons of people in this movie. And it is one of these films where it's back in the day. Like, yes, we're about to get Barbie nominated for Best Picture, so comedies can still get nominated. But it used to be kind of more common that like kind of just more like generic comedies could get nominated. And not that this is generic, this is more of a satire, but it's in the the realm of kind of like it's a mad world type of a comedy, where Alan Arkin, but he's like the captain of this submarine who ends up accidentally running aground on the shores of Maine, I believe it is, or it just says New England coast. He runs aground and he needs to like get a ship to get himself like pulled off. But what, like, he is this Russian man who is like going into New England, and all these people, like especially Carl Reiner's character, whose house he goes to, automatically assumes that he is like being invaded by the Russians, and it kind of sets off this panic in this town that the Russians are invading. So like all this overreaction happens and just like leads to this chaotic incident where people are calling in the Coast Guards and people are getting kidnapped and like tied up on chairs, and just everything's going crazy. And it doesn't help that like this, like Carl Reiner's young son's kind of egging him on as a coward because he's not doing anything to to thwart the Russians and stuff. And it's hilarious, but it's also very heartfelt at the end because it kind of brings together, like, it kind of hinges on a message of like understanding, where maybe not making snap judgments and like really listening to one another is very important. And there are some of these kind of more serious moments that kind of complement the more absurd humor very well. So while it is very funny, it also has some dramatic heft to it as well. And I think it just all plays very well. And especially, you don't really get to see Carl Reiner in a lot of like premium roles like this. And he is fantastic in this role. Everything kind of works together to culminate in a really satisfying finale. It's just a really, really enjoyable movie. So this is from director Norman Jewison, who did like In the Heat of the Night. And he talks about, he is takes part in an archival interview that runs about 23 minutes, where he's talking about the making of this movie. It's very interesting. So that's been ported over. What is new is an audio commentary track from film historian Michael Schlesinger and Mark Evanier. And so the commentary is great. This has the same master as the previous release, but now, like I said, has a dual layer Blu-ray 50. So it's allowed to look a little bit better. I did not notice anything terribly like egregious or anything. So this is one of the better looking re-releases that if you're not going to have like a fresh new master, the base that they're working from is actually pretty solid. And it sounds pretty good as well. So overall, a real well-rounded release. If they would have made this a 4K, I would have been thrilled. But as it is, it's nice to have this with the a little bit extra room to breathe, the new commentary track and everything, and other archival special features, and this slipcover. Which one detail I like about their slipcovers is instead of like their normal print, they have like kind of the title treatment here. That's a little bit different from just like your normal, like everyday like black and white stuff that they have here. So that's a little bit a fun thing to stand out on your shelf. But overall, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. It's a really good release, and I'm glad I finally checked it out because it's really entertaining.
Yeah, when I saw this was on your list for the week, I was really excited because had not seen this movie, but I've heard really good things.
Mhm.
And now this is again adding another one to the pile. But yeah, like this one is one I definitely am gonna try to get really soon here. But so my final title is Gator, and I know I said it was crap, and I still stand by that, but I will explain. I do there is things I like about it, but so here is now this one does not have reversible cover art, and just get the disc. But yeah, so Burt Reynolds directed this one, and I don't know. Like I said, it's interesting because it doesn't really reference the previous film. So you watching it first is like probably not that jarring, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like, I mean, even him just being previously in jail doesn't really factor into anything. But I want to focus on what I liked about this movie first. It kind of doesn't go so hard on the like country fried elements of like White Lightning, and that could be a plus or a minus for you depending on like if you dig that certain genre. Like I thought it was fine in White Lightning, but like again, it could be a little bit cringe or a little bit much. Especially when you just have like stuff that doesn't really kind of move the plot forward. But it's there to be like, oh, look at them hicks. um, but Gator kind of does away with most of that, and it kind of streamlines it into a little bit more of like a kind of a Bond-esque um like film. I got very much like a James Bond sort of knockoff, but not too blatantly, but it's a little bit more in that mode versus like White Lightning, which is like a little bit more of like a sort of old school Roger Corman like movie where he's trying to like emulate other popular movies where it's just I don't know rambling. But yeah, Gator is has some really fun moments. Oh my god, there's a scene where like I thought I was being dosed where it was like this crazy lady with her cats and how bizarre that is. But then like they kill her later in the movie and her cats. It kind of pissed me off because I think I liked her character the most out of like everybody,
Mhm.
and like it was just so jarring. And it didn't really serve a purpose to like go in that hard. Like it kind of was weird tonally. Like I I guess like you want stakes. You want to be like even the cool cat lady weird character we introduced for like I'm not no reason. I mean she was the plot mechanism for the books, but I don't know. She was super endearing, and then you're like, we're gonna kill her and we're gonna kill all of her fucking cats at the same time. Like that's that's why I think that's kind of why I turned sour on this movie. I was like, I was into it. It was kind of a little bit more of a breezy, fun sort of like action film. Again, was the plot like super original? No, that's fine. That like speedboat chase at the beginning was so fucking cool. I think that was like one of the coolest things. So yeah, there's things I like about this, but killing that cool ass cat lady, no, no, ma'am.
Just ruined it for you.
It did. But also, like, did you think, no, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but like, didn't you kind of feel like it just sort of like, I don't know, it just felt abrupt. It felt like there was something missing. It just,
I'm gonna be honest with you. It's been like 2 months, and I've probably watched like 300
Oh,
movies since.
oh no,
So,
I get it. I get
yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it just it feels very much like okay, we're getting to, the climax and then it's all just sort of resolved, but there's no really like I don't know, there's no satisfying sort of payoff. It's just okay, this is the status quo now. And I'm like, what? I mean, I was even like, did I skip a chapter? Like, they missing something? Like, is my disc fucked up? It's not, but it's just the movie. But that's kind of why I said it was crap because I think it had a lot of really good things going for it. I think like even with some of the more like absurd humor, it kind of helped, balance the tone a little bit. But then like to upheaval that is kind of weird. And like, I mean, I can tell Burt Reynolds was a first time filmmaker. I think like structurally the film is also a little bit wonky, and that's something I think like a more seasoned director probably could have like honed in. A Walter Hill, something like that, Richard Donner would like have fucking killed this movie, right? Though, like
Yeah.
either one of those directors, yes. But again, Burt Reynolds, he's got that charm. Holy shit! Like you, even if you don't really like his movies, like especially like young Burt Reynolds, you're like you just melt. You
Mm.
do. That's just it's science. You look at it in a textbook, Burt Reynolds, young Burt Reynolds especially, will melt you. You're
Mm.
done. Yep. So, but to wrap this up, it looks good. I mean, it seems on par with like the previous transfer, which is nice. Again, I think like this maybe fares a little bit better. It's a little bit of a newer film comparatively. This was like 3 years later. It like looks a little bit brighter and crisper, cleaner. You still get a little bit of like artifacts here and there, but it's not distracting, and it's overall really nice. And as you said, we got part two of the really good like Burt Reynolds interview,
Mm.
commentary track by Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson, rounded out with radio spots and trailer. I was gonna say, didn't you have some? You had some final.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember enjoying the movie more than you did, but I'm glad that I'm glad they re-released it and brought this into my life. Even though I watched it out of order, I don't know. Maybe that impacted how I felt about it because I was just like, just diving into this character and like figuring stuff out. But yeah, it's an okay movie. As a pair of movies, I think they're worth checking out if you're a Burt Reynolds
Mhm.
fan. But they're nothing like incredibly special, but they're fun enough. And I mean, Burt, just hanging out with Burt it can be fun. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, I just again I felt so betrayed because I it sounds so dumb, but I like that character. And I thought like the thing with the cats was like so goddamn bizarre that I was just loving it. And I was like, all right. And then I was just like, wow, you like just infernoed her and her cats. Her cats too, for good measure.
Mhm.
Like that's really harsh. Shit. But so goes. That is our episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us, checking these movies out. Please the obligatory give this a like, subscribe, all that really good things. We have new content coming out daily, and you don't want to miss that. And as always, we love to hear from you. So, let us know what you think of the titles that we covered. What are some maybe other new titles that maybe should be on our radar? Or, what do you think of like Gator? Am I wrong? You're like, yes. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us.